Hello there. What's going on? I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, here on our show. We continue to be streaming from various locations. I happen to be in my office today, and my guests are also on campus in different locations. They are Stephen Petrus, who is the Director of Public History Programs at the LaGuardia and Wagner Archives, and Andre Ford, who is a Rainbow LaGuardia participant, who is a high school equivalency program specialist for the CUNY Fatherhood Academy. And we're here today to talk about the opening of the Rainbow LaGuardia exhibit on campus, the LGBTQ faculty and staff on the third floor of the E atrium. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for having
having
us.
us.
You got it. Oh, now I'm hearing a little bit of an echo. I don't know if Chris is doing can hear that, but I don't know. Is it me?
Is it me?
Hope not. I don't hear it anymore. Okay, well, we'll see what's what. Um, we've talked a little bit about the format, so I wanted to give you two an opportunity to introduce yourselves. Though Stephen has been on the show before, but just a little bit about your backgrounds, your studies, things like that.
Yeah, sure, Hugo. Thanks. I'm a historian at LaGuardia and Wagner Archives. I did my PhD in urban history at the CUNY Graduate Center. I completed my degree in 2010, and with a focus on New York City cultural studies. And for many years, I adjuncted at different schools in the CUNY system at Lehman College in the Bronx, at Hunter College. I was also a museum curator at the Museum of the City of New York. Um, I arrived at the archives in 2016, and really since the very beginning, Hugo, I've been focused on LGBTQ studies at the archives. I've been really focused on one particular major project per year, and this all originated after Daniel Drum, who was co-founder of the Queen's Pride Parade in 1993 and a three-term city council member, donated his personal papers to the archives. My first task was to research his collection, and I did, and I found it to be a treasure trove and really illuminated trends in LGBT pride movement in Queens. We often think of Manhattan, lower Manhattan, but his archive really shifted the focus to Queens, especially with the founding of the Queen's Pride Parade in 1993. And we at the archives worked with the commercial photography program to develop an exhibit based largely on the Drum collection in 2017. And that led to funding from New York City Council to continue to do our work. And I was tasked to take a leading role in the work. And our first project after that was an exhibit on LGBTQ students on campus. We conducted oral history interviews with them, took photographs of them, and completed the installation in 2019, 50th anniversary of Stonewall, and it went really well. The students were very candid, open about their experiences, and so many important topics came out concerning family, religion, race, ethnicity, gender equity, gender identity. And we thought, let's build on this. And that's where we are right now with Rainbow LaGuardia. We said we shifted from the students to faculty and staff. And then we pursued this initiative, contacting all LGBTQ identified faculty and staff on campus, invited them to participate in this exhibit, Rainbow LaGuardia. Again, we did oral history interviews with them, very personal, very intimate, about their struggles, challenges, about some of their achievements as well, and about their professional experiences. And we ultimately finished it and launched it as an online exhibit a couple of years ago. But the pandemic, of course, disrupted things, and we were only able just recently to install it on campus. So that's just a little bit of background about my own work as co-curator. I really took a leading role in doing the oral history interviews with folks, and it was just a great honor for me to meet people like Andre, and 26 other faculty and staff too are featured in this exhibit.
I get the feeling, Stephen, you've been talking about this a lot because you've basically done the entire show
Okay.
in like 3 minutes. But we're going to try to unpack
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. No,
Uh,
that's just a
and that's okay.
that's just a very
No, no,
brief
don't worry about it.
overview. That's just a brief overview. Um, because
Okay, well,
yeah.
let's give Andre a chance here to talk a little about himself, and then we'll come back and talk about some more aspects of this. So, Andre, you're a participant, and when you were invited, I didn't know if you were a photographer or or a subject, and I get the vibe at this point that you are a subject
Yes.
of the photographs. But you want to talk a little bit about yourself, your background and studies, and
Sure,
we can feel free to
sure.
keep going after that.
Absolutely. So, briefly, my name is Andre Ford. I'm the high school equivalency program specialist with CUNY Fatherhood Academy. It's an adult and continuing education program that works with young fathers as well as their families, with basically having access to a quality education. And we definitely take pride in our work. I'm currently pursuing my doctoral degree in social work through the University of Alabama. I'm currently in my second year, and my research interest primarily pertains to how can we make academic spaces truly inclusive and identity affirming for individuals who identify as LGBTQIA and then also are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So that's what my research interest primarily revolves around. And before I came to work at LaGuardia, I worked at Covenant House, New York, which is an opportunity shelter for homeless youth. And that's where I really began to do my work um, with working with and in collaboration with individuals who identify as LGBTQIA. So this is pretty much an opportunity that's come full circle for me.
You're saying you're studying University of Alabama.
Correct.
Uh, are you doing this online, or is it just are you in the period of writing your dissertation and stuff like that?
So it is a predominantly online program. So basically, during the fall and spring semester, the majority of the work is online. But then during the summers, I get release time from the college, and I go and I do my residency in Alabama for a short amount of time.
Wow. And any particular reason why you chose University of Alabama?
I chose the University of Alabama because their programmatic philosophy is very much grounded in anti-racism and anti-oppression work. So really looking at how we can do research from an anti-racist and anti-oppression lens was something that really, really resonated with me. And then it was also about access. When I looked at the faculty is extremely diverse. It includes women, people of color, et cetera, et cetera. So when I looked at the curriculum and the goodness of fit, it felt like it was a good fit for me.
Done.
And plus, it
All
allows
right.
me to work, continue to do my work here full time. And that's
And
important
that's
for
good.
me as a man of a
Yes, we
certain
need you.
age.
Oh, really? Okay. Good. Good to know. Um, so let's unpack some of this. This is, and we'll talk about that. I think Stephen, you were on previously when we did the first, or you had the first exhibition opening. Actually, as I remember, I think I might have even been simulcasting live from the opening itself. I was like wandering around. We had set up, some sort of uh, something with a computer that was streaming it live. So I remember that. So we're in the second. So how do the two shows differ in the sense that the first one was students and the second one is staff and faculty? Is that what
Yes,
I'm trying to say?
exactly right. That's the key distinction. But I feel, Hugo, they're almost in a dialogue with each other. One's on the second floor, one's on the third floor. And of course, um, hearing a student perspective, I think the key difference is just the fact that most of our students are from Generation Z. And their vocabulary is so different than even millennials and prior generations. The way they speak about gender fluidity and sexual orientation, and they are establishing it as a cultural norm. And that really came through in the oral history interviews with the students. So, they're 18, 20,
And
22 years old. And that was really, I think, the
okay,
predominant thing with the students.
yeah, I wanted you to tell me Generation Z because I can't, I have a problem keeping up with all the generations. But anyhow, generations, which I guess my daughter must be Generation Z because she's 23.
Yes, yeah.
So here's the question: how do you go about finding the subjects to photograph? Did you send out an email? We're looking for faculty, staff who identify as out, and you took it from there. Is that
Yeah,
how
that was
how it
part of
began?
it, Hugo. But also there is a Lavender LaGuardia group on campus. They have a website. It was started by historian Chelsea Del Rio, and basically all LGBTQ plus identified faculty and staff have their name on this website called Lavender LaGuardia. So I literally went down there, about 40 individuals or so, and emailed folks and said, hey, this is who I am. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to build off the student exhibit to do faculty and staff, and it would involve doing an oral history interview that will be filmed. It will involve doing a photography element as well, done by a LaGuardia student. And these will be personal, intimate interviews. We'll meet beforehand to talk about it because I don't want to come to the interview and asking questions cold, but we can talk. Heck, we have a pre-interview and then do it. So out of about 40 people, 27 ultimately agreed. It wasn't 100%, but a really good number. I didn't know how many we'd get, maybe 5, 10, 15. Lo and behold, 27 people agreed. So we used the Lavender LaGuardia list to contact people. Plus, we had known many folks through previous initiatives at the archives. We had personal relationships with many LGBTQ faculty and staff. But this was the opportunity when I met Andre for the first time, was by just emailing him cold, and he responded right away.
Andre, you want to talk about that? So you so they call you and ask you what was you thinking about this?
Very interesting question because, interestingly enough, for me to be transparent and open about how I identify in regards to my sexual orientation, I've always more or less have been an extremely private person. And my primary concern initially was I always want my work to precede me and the quality of the work that I do. So to agree to the opportunity, I literally thought of it as an opportunity to truly become integrated as a person professionally and personally. So when the opportunity was presented to me to do it, before then, I was known as an ally. You know, students knew that they could come to me if they needed to talk about some things and to discuss some things, but I was never really truly, quote unquote, out, whatever that means. So when the opportunity actually came, it was kind of like, okay, jump into the ocean and choose to swim, or stay here on the coast and remain, safe and taken care of. And I just decided to just jump into the ocean. And that's why I decided to do it.
I was going to say because now your photograph is now up on the wall.
Oh yeah, I mean it's there. So this is public information. It's accessed from all over the world. So it's
It's
here.
online.
It's
Right on.
online. So it's here for eternity.
Steven, you want to talk about some of the players who put, because we're talking about videography, oral recordings, interviews, and but also the photography. So you want to talk about some of the folks who are part of your team?
Yeah, and it was a big team. It was a collaborative initiative. I've worked with Terry Gorjean from commercial photography for about 5 years. We did the exhibit on Queens LGBTQ history at the Queens Museum in 2017 together. I conducted the oral history interviews. Terry, photography professor, trained students who then contacted the subjects and arranged for a photo shoot. At a place of significance, of meaning to them, And our students were fantastic, Hugo. I mean, just some brilliant students trained by Terry. Terry edited the photographs, did the installation, and then I went back. I did the interviews. Each interview, Hugo, was about 60 minutes long, and my videographer is Brandon Calva. We've worked together for many years doing this, and I went back and reviewed these interviews. And from these interviews, I identified key moments. 60-second excerpts, 90-second excerpts, 2 minutes, and said, okay, this is worth excerpting and including on the online exhibit. And it's also available in the physical exhibit too. So you go to the physical exhibit, and with your phone, you scan the QR code, and it takes you, the exhibit visitor, to the online exhibit, and you can hear these excerpts from these interviews. So someone like Andre had, I don't know, like 5 or 6 excerpts because his interview was that good. And these excerpts are really meant to focus on a particular issue that I think is important, whether it's concerns religion, race, dating apps, coming out, family support, big issues that I think will be good for our students to hear these excerpts, for our faculty and staff, for other folks all over the world, as Andre says, accessing these interviews, could use them in the classroom, use them elsewhere. So that was really like the methodology, was to go back and review the interviews and identify really important moments and focus on them on the online exhibit as well as the physical installation. The whole interviews are part of our LGBTQ collection here at the archives. So if you want to read, say, Andre's 60-minute interview transcript, you have access to that as well. And that's pretty exciting.
Andre, do you remember what you talked about in your interview? 60 minutes. And by the way, that's what this show classically is a 60 minute. Because usually I feel like, could it be shorter? Could it be longer? Probably either case, but it's a good piece of time to try to see if something can come out, right? But so, what was that like for you, Andre, being interviewed and answering all these questions?
I mean, it was a very intense, almost cathartic experience. My undergraduate degree is in history, so I have a really good understanding of what uh, LGBTQIA individuals have had to endure, survive, and triumph over, just throughout the history of this country, and then within the last half century of the last century in particular. And basically, to sum up what my interview primarily pertained to, it was basically about what does it mean to be a black non-heterosexual man in academia from the South, who was raised in the Protestant church, and how was I able to really reconcile my faith, my identity, and really just become a fully embodied person. And that was basically what it was about. Because it's taken me a very long time, to get here, as far as truly being authentic and transparent with myself and to myself. And then with the opportunity to do that, to be able to be transparent and authentic with others, which is something that is extremely important.
Right. And what about the photo shoot? Where did, for example, well, and we're going to look at some pictures, but I was going to
Hmm.
ask you,
Hmm.
where did you choose to be photographed and why?
Okay, so there were basically two places that I chose. So the location of the two places, it's in the West Village. So the first place that I chose was the pier. And if you look at LGBTQIA history, for a lot of LGBTQIA youth who are homeless, for Black and Brown people of color, the piers were basically our gathering place. So it was a place of refuge, it was a place of safety where individuals could socialize. When the ballroom scene was really, really popular in the 1980s and the 1990s, this was the place where we would gather to connect and fellowship with one another. And if you have a particular interest in it's somewhat of a historically accurate, there's a film called Paris is Burning.
I was going to say.
And the film starts with individuals dancing on the pier. So that's a very good reference point. And then the second place that I chose is no longer this place, but it used to be a bar that I would go to. It was called Chi Chi's. And the reason why Chi Chi's was so important at the time was because it was in the West Village. And as gentrification was really beginning to take root within that neighborhood, this was literally the nucleus gathering place for Black and brown people who were LGBTQIA within the West Village. So it was the place that we could go to. We knew that it was ours. We knew that it was a place where we could connect and fellowship with like minded individuals. So I chose to take pictures in both of those places because when I initially moved here from the South, those were the places that I went to initially to find community and create community.
Great. Maybe we should take a look at the pictures then. I mean, and I talked about our engineer Chris Pope is going to figure out a way. I don't know if we're going to see it on our screen. I'm hoping to see it on the Twitch screen, which is right behind me. So Chris is going to put it up, and I can kind of tell you. I will. If you can't see it, I will try to. What happens if I turn off this? Will you see my? You see the computer better a little bit? There? No, that's no good. So okay, so Chris has got the Rainbow LaGuardia uh, page up. Uh, so let's scroll down, Chris. There's going to be a lag between what I asked for and what he can do. I'm guessing only because. Okay, here we go. So top row, got Alejandro Lopez, Paul Arcario, who just recently retired, and Nyrita Seals, who on. Scroll down. I mean, if so, we've got Sonia Alejandro Rodriguez. Go back a second. Oh, now wait a minute. Okay, so here we've got Andre. Stop there, Chris. So Andre's
Stop the
on the far
presses.
left here. What happens if we click on the picture? Does it get bigger, or is that
Do it. Do it. See what happens.
Yeah. Okay. Ooh, awesome.
Right, tens
Wow.
across the board.
Yeah, this is a great picture. You know what I noticed too, and I mean I'll say this. You can go back to Andre's face, Chris. Oh, Chris is trying to negotiate, like, trying to get everything in the same. One of the things I noticed about your picture that is different than a lot of the other pictures is that I noticed, and I don't know whether this was some sort of style issue or maybe Terry's preferences, who did some of the editing, or you, Stephen. So I noticed a lot of people like look up. There's like this kind of gaze up into whatever it is, the sky or above.
Mhm.
Uh, Andre's picture is like straight on at us. He's like staring us, like looking at us directly, and which I noticed picked out of the crowd right away. You want to talk about that? Was there a discussion between you and the photographer about how to look? By the way, you should know I'm a photography professor, Andre.
Mhm,
So if
mhm.
that means anything to you, but
So, first and foremost, the person who did the photography with me was absolutely positively wonderful. Like I couldn't have asked for a better photographer because we did discuss it. And part of the discussion with me was I wanted to communicate visually in a particular way. Here I am, I see myself. And by me seeing myself, the individuals who would have the opportunity to view the exhibition, they would see me also. Because I think that's one of the things that's extremely important, especially for students who will be able to access this exhibition, that when they see me, they see a reflection of themselves. But they not only see a reflection of themselves, but they see an individual who's confident, who's comfortable, and who is very affirmed in who he is. So to get back to your question, it was very intentional with me looking directly into the camera versus looking upward into the sky or what have you.
Stephen, was there any discussion about that, about the way, where people looked or in,
Not with me. So it was really a dynamic process between the exhibit subject and the photographer. This back and forth, give and take, find the location, the gaze, the angle, the light, everything. And it took a long time too. I think this is one thing that Terry from the photography program relayed, that these were, I don't know, Andre, how long was it? An hour, 2 hours or something like that. So it was a lengthy process,
Very
and it
much.
was really very meticulous, the details. And I think the students ended up, Hugo, taking hundreds of pictures. Terry ultimately went through them and identified them.
Hmm.
And I think, to your point, Hugo, there was somewhat of a consistency about the photos, but each was unique too. So we want to capture the character of the individual, the personality, the spirit of each individual, but also remember it's part of a broader exhibit. So there should be some kind of organic connection among them. And same with the oral history interviews too. There were some similar questions for each individual, but there were also different ones too, because of course each person's unique, has a unique personal journey. So yeah, as exhibit co-curators, we had all of this in mind prior to both the oral history interview and the photography shoot.
here's a question for you. So that I saw there's language for each picture, which I'm sure you played a role in. What's the language for Andre? What does it
Y-
say? You remember?
Me,
We can
well,
look at it. I mean, I can make Chris. Okay, so it
yeah,
says
well,
Andre Ford challenges as a bisexual man in the Southern Baptist Church in Houston. Occasionally, his preacher sermonized God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. So Andre kept his sexual identity private, and as a result, felt inner turmoil. Felt inner turmoil. After graduating from college, Andre attended conversion therapy meetings at Exodus International and XCA. Station sought to help people with sexual desires. Interestingly, most of the married men. Something about the sessions didn't right to Andre, and he stopped sexuality.
yeah, I wrote all those snapshots,
Right.
Hugo, and they're based on our interview. And I didn't want to write a short biography, but I wanted to capture a moment in each participant's experience, some
Right.
kind of a turning point, a pivotal moment, a moment of tension, a moment of anguish, a reckoning moment. And that's how I did it. And I wanted to encapsulate that in one paragraph. So it's not meant to be Andre's biography, but here was a real moment of a pivotal moment in his personal journey. And so I wanted to do that in a way so you, the exhibit visitor, the reader, can say, oh, well, that's I can identify with that, or I can't identify with that, but that's interesting, that's provocative, that gets me thinking, that upsets me, or that inspires me. And you know what my motivation for all this, I don't know if you remember, after 9/11, the New York Times did these portraits of each individual who died in 9/11, just a snapshot about each person, like, oh, they like Scorsese films, or they were a New York Mets fan or something and love to, just a little snapshot that's meant to stimulate the exhibit visitor. So I wrote those. I put a lot of effort into writing them, and I got the approval of each individual. I said, Andre and other folks, I just want to run this by you. And they reviewed it, approved it, and that's part of the exhibit as well. So just to kind of give more depth to each individual.
I just want to say that we're at the half hour mark. It's at 11:31. The show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez. And today, my guests on the show are, hold on a second, pulling it up, Stephen Petrus, Director of Public History Programs at the LaGuardia and Wagner Archives, and Andre Ford, a Rainbow LaGuardia participant who is a high school equivalency program specialist for the CUNY Fatherhood Academy. And we're discussing the opening, which will be today at noon of the Rainbow LaGuardia exhibit on campus, LGBTQ faculty and staff on the third floor of the E atrium. So, yeah, two things I just wanted to say about, just Andre's picture and everything is that, when Andre talked about that stuff about the peers is interesting. And one of the struggles for photographers is that we wish we could communicate all of that in a picture, but it has that kind of thing it works in conjunction with the oral history, and not to mention the fact that those peers are probably don't look the way they looked back in the 80s and 90s, right, Andre?
Correct.
And
Correct.
but it triggered a memory for me of there's I think it was on HBO. They did a show called "If These Walls Could Talk,"
Hmm.
and it was about this house that had successive generations of LGBTQIA plus people who had relationships and all the struggles that they had gone through as a result of society's response to their sexuality
And the thing that's very
and handle it. Oh,
and the
Chris, we
thing
can.
that's very interesting
Oh, sorry.
about that specific peer, Marsha P. Johnson, who is iconic within the LGBTQIA movement, that's where her body was found.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's in taking it at that pier, you're standing on the
Right.
shoulders of, your ancestors who came before you,
Right.
and just fighting for equality and being inclusive. So that resonated with me also.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to say with
Uh,
Andre, in particular, I found places to be very important in his personal journey, whether it was the Baptist Church in Houston, or a theater. He's also a playwright, or a gay bar, or the Piers, where these all represented important spaces for him, that corresponded with his own development. And yeah, you can't really, like, gay bars, for example, crucially important when there weren't many other spaces out there to find a sense of community. And it really struck me in our particular interview, Andre, just the
Hmm.
importance of space and place.
yeah. I didn't. Chris took us off the website. I didn't know if there were any other particular pictures that are maybe a favorite of yours, Stephen. We don't have Terry on who can talk about more about the photography process. Were there any other ones that you wanted to highlight from
Well,
what we
yeah,
looked at?
I really, so many of
I don't know if
them,
Chris can pull up the slide again.
so many of them struck me. Narita Seals, who's no longer with us, is now at Central New Mexico, in an administrative position. I thought her picture was just really powerful.
The other way, Chris. She's up on the top, going the other directions. Chris is scrolling down. I want him to scroll up. And I read it. There it is, right there. The horizontal. That one. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just the
I don't know if you can make it bigger.
if folks, in the physical exhibit on the third floor or online, take a look at Narita's, I think it's really powerful because it captures her strength and her beauty and her determination, and everything is just converged nicely with the light, the backdrop. She, in fact, uses that photograph in social media, and she shares it. She absolutely loves it. So, and we got really great responses from exhibit participants who were really thankful. And to work with students too is such a beautiful thing. It's part of the collaborative effort.
Can I read the remark you wrote to
Sure.
her? So it says, when Nyrita Seals was in graduate school at New York University, she and some classmates talked about how their parents would react if they came out as gay or lesbian. Few thought their parents would disown them. The conversation prompted Nyrita to call her mom in California and ask what her response would be. Nyrita's mom said, I can't love you one moment, not love you the next. She added, please don't tell your father. Nyrita's father was battling cancer at the time, and it had metastasized. She didn't want to make matters difficult for her dad. She never came out to him. The story reminds us about the complexity of family. No easy answers. Big decisions can talks about her open, free.
Yes.
Wow, that's
Yeah, no, these are
intense.
powerful things. And again, students can read these and see themselves, or maybe not. And how one parent can be loving unconditionally, one parent pauses, goes through his or her own journey in terms of acceptance. We often ask, how are your parents doing? We ask that question to the students. And it took many of them a long time to understand and embrace and love, whereas some immediately supported their children. And the same way with faculty and staff,
Mm.
you get that love and support, or in some cases rejection, and it's heartbreaking. It's truly heartbreaking
Yeah.
to be, maybe to fear expulsion at some points. Some of our students remarked about that. Maybe some of our faculty and staff had to deal with that, maybe delayed their coming out. So family relationships are critical in this exhibit, and so yeah, absolutely, it really comes through in the oral history interviews.
Yeah, it's 11:37, and one thing that we have to honor is the fact that both Andre and Steven have to get to the exhibition. Andre has to go a little bit farther. I know personally it takes about 15 minutes to get from the C building to the E building without, jumping in front of oncoming traffic. So I wanted to give Andre a little bit of time here to share anything he'd like to share
it
about that he hasn't had a chance to yet.
it's it
Yeah, you haven't had a chance.
it's interesting that as you was
In 1 second, Chris, you can bring us back if you want from the site. You can bring us back to.
it's interesting as you was reading the oral history of Narita Seals and how her father passed away before she was able to come out. And I have a similar experience. My father passed away in 2014, and it was unexpected. He went in for a procedure to remove cancer, and unfortunately, he died from complications of the procedure. And one of the things that I regret is that I didn't have the opportunity to share that intimate part of myself with him before he transitioned and passed away. Because to be able to share that part of who you are with the people that you love most is something that is extremely important. And it just reminds me of our students when, they're here, they're trying to get their diploma, they're trying to achieve all of these different goals, how important it is for each and every one of them to be able to walk into a space where they're not, quote unquote, just being tolerated, because there's a major difference between tolerance and being truly included within a space, that they honestly and sincerely truly feel included. And when you think about, LaGuardia as an institution, in so many ways, we do so much more than simply educate students. It's a space where some of them are just trying to develop in ways that are very, very personal. And that's important to be aware of as well in the work that we do. So I would say that, and there is a difference between Generation Z, millennials, because when you ask me what generation I'm a part of, it depends on the day you ask. Stephen, you're the historian, so sometimes I'm told I'm on the tail end of Generation X. Sometimes I'm told that I'm right at the beginning of being a millennial because I was kind of born right on the cusp. So I can still remember turntables and CDs and rotary phones, and I was a part of that transition. But I'm saying all of that to say my cousins, my niece, my nephews, it's just not a thing at all. It's just not. And they're, of course, they're younger than me. And when it comes to, older members in my family, they are very loving and open and accepting. But the fear was so much more on my side or on my end versus theirs. So just kind of like negotiating the generational differences, uh, and quote unquote coming out and being more transparent. And I guess the last thing I would want to say, because I don't want the South to get a bad reputation, okay? Growing up in the South, definitely had its advantages. Just learning about family, learning about faith, understanding the importance of ritual and taking it easy. Uh, there was quite a bit of love there. And I wouldn't be the person that I am if I didn't grow up in the South. I think it kind of prepared me uh, to be a New Yorker, having that opportunity, because I appreciate living in New York a lot more because I wasn't born here, born and raised here. Yeah.
And you've got about 3 minutes. I didn't know if there was anybody you wanted to thank before you left, Andre. You got about 3 minutes till you have to go. So
Um, there's so many people to thank. First of all, I'm just grateful to Stephen for having the inspiration to do this work because it really does provide a platform for individuals such as myself to show up. And like I said, when the opportunity was offered to me, and I literally like looked at the email and I was trying to decide, am I going to do this or not? It was an opportunity for me to say, okay, are you going to stay here on the shore or are you going to jump in and swim? I would also say, and I won't name any names specifically, but I also want to thank the students that I have worked with who identify as LGBTQIA. I can think of three of them specifically. And basically, the motivation that they gave me is that if they could do it and they could be brave, then why couldn't I be? Because the students modeled it for me first. So I'm definitely grateful to the students for doing that. And then last but not least, I would say I would thank my colleagues here at CUNY Fatherhood Academy. They are an extremely supportive group of individuals, from my program director to my coworkers or what have you. I continue to have a lot of support just in regards to that, because I think there is a recognition that to be open and to be out, it does take a lot of emotional, physical, and spiritual labor to do that. So to be working on a team that recognizes that and supports me to the best of their ability is something that I do not take for granted.
I just want to thank you for being on the show
Thank you.
and giving us your time. And I just want to say, congratulations and enjoy the exhibition.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Take care, Stephen. I'll see
I'll,
you
I'll see you
soon.
in a few minutes, Andre.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And Stephen, I got to let you go at what, 11:50?
Yes, yeah, I have a few more minutes.
Okay, so we got about 6 minutes. So I guess I will give you as well the opportunity now to any last things you'd like to share, and people you'd like to thank as well.
Thanks, Hugo. I was just grateful for these 27 individuals to agree to participate because it was not easy. It's not just so easy to speak in such personal, intimate terms about family relationships and struggles and anguish, and to do it in such a candid way. And I can really say people like Andre were incredibly open, and to be able to share your story in this fashion, and for us at the archives as historians and archivists to record that and to preserve it and to make it available to future researchers, current researchers, is really an honor. And it's very interesting, Hugo. There are already graduate students writing their dissertations partly on this exhibit, partly on these oral histories conducted by myself. And so it's especially gratifying that the work is having an impact, yes, on campus, but off campus as well. So for them to make themselves vulnerable in this way, to be their authentic selves in communicating their personal narratives, was really fantastic, and an honor to be part of this. And it truly does help build community on campus. So I think, I'm hoping that faculty in particular will take some of these oral history excerpts and use them in their classes, or show some of these photographs. And as you just did, talk about the photographs, talk about the similarities and differences. So I don't want it just to be something that you enjoy passively, but actively too. So I encourage you, other faculty and staff, to make use of this exhibit, to spark dialogue, to have conversations, in classes to have writing assignments. So it's meant to be actively engaged. And that's my hope moving forward, along with the student exhibit just one floor down on the second floor. And again, I'm really grateful and honored to be part of this. To gain the trust of individuals was a really humbling experience, and to work with colleagues at the archives as well, always very supportive, part of the process, and the commercial photography program as well. Truly a really enriching experience for me.
Yeah, I would just say as one faculty member, I assigned students to write about art in the college collection, and I highlighted the exhibition, and a lot of them were excited, particularly by the QR codes. Believe it or not, I mean, obviously, and the strength of the photographs. And it's interesting you picked that, and I noticed that Narita looking straight at us, but I've realized there's a lot of that, like Dimitri Kaptanakis, another photograph I think is very strong in. So yeah, it's an amazing show, and I only wish I could go I might be able to run over there, Beck, but I've got phone
Okay.
calls and another show at 1 o'clock. Uh, but I just want to thank you for being on the show, and congratulate you. I know that. And is the project headed? We didn't talk about this, but is there going to be? What's the next phase going to be? Is there a next phase?
Yeah, each year we devote resources to one major public history project. We focus on one topic, and we're really dealing with politics these last couple of years. This forthcoming year, we're going to focus on the 1986 Gay Rights Bill, passed by New York City Council to prohibit discrimination in housing, employment, public accommodations for LGBTQ people. It took 15 years for that legislation to be passed. From 1971, it was first proposed, ultimately passed in 1986, basically civil rights legislation. So we students and faculty staff are going to look at our collection, our city council collection here at the archives, our Ed Koch collection, research it, and to try to understand this movement for civil rights for LGBTQ people in New York City. We'll be doing oral history interviews with people involved in that passage of the legislation, activists, opponents, and to try to gain a greater understanding of it, because we think it's relevant too. I mean, you see what's happening in Florida with Don't Say Gay. We talk about progress, but we know it's also an ongoing struggle. So the 1986 Gay Rights Bill will be our focus next year.
I just want to thank you for joining us, and again, congratulations, and enjoy the opening. And we're going to do a little early close just to get you out of
Okay.
here. And I want to thank everybody for watching, listening. The show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, here on LaGuardia Web Radio. And our guest today has been Stephen Petrus, Director of Public History Programs at the LaGuardia and Wagner Archives. And Andre Ford, who had to leave a few minutes early, a Rainbow LaGuardia participant, who is a high school equivalency program specialist for the CUNY Fatherhood Academy. And they were on today to discuss the Rainbow LaGuardia exhibit, which is on campus, and it's going to be highlighting LGBTQ faculty and staff. And the opening will be on the third floor of the E atrium. Folks should head over there to see it. And I'll just ask my engineer, Mr. Pope, who's done a great job today highlighting the website and everything, to take us out as we went in with Miss Diana Ross. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.
Thank you.